7 states that have it, and the trick is, can you be subject to this lawsuit here in Maryland?
Yes.
How?
If you actually cheated with somebody
From one of those states.
from one of those states, or you know.
If you went to North Carolina and you were subject, and you went to the beach and you hooked up down there, you could be sued under North Carolina law because of where the cheating took place. If somebody from one of those states came up here, they have a connection with that law. You could even be sued if you did it here.
Yeah.
So yes, and it is not in very many states. It's only those 7. Go ahead.
But one issue I had with that I think I brought up when we talked about it was if you don't know that they're married,
Yes.
like what kind of defense would you be able to bring?
You still have to prove it, and in fact, they still have to have the money to be able to pay the lawsuit, because if it's somebody that's poor, I mean, you're not really gonna get much out of that, and you're right with both of those. You still have to be able to prove it, but, you know, you can kinda know sometimes, even if somebody doesn't tell you, if somebody's kinda up to something.
What is it called when like laws still stick across state lines?
Laws still stick?
Yeah. No. Like I think we talked about it in terms of like gay marriage.
Yeah.
Or if you're married in New Hampshire.
Credit?
Let's go to the second chapter, because that's really where you're going. Full faith and credit. What was the full faith and credit clause?
It says that if you, the federal government has one law,
Yes.
and then the state like has, for the gay marriage example, some states have civil union, some
Yes.
state, or I think at least one state now has legalized physical marriage as opposed to civil union.
Yeah.
So the federal government cannot say no, you can't, or no.
Yeah, hold on, because I think you're getting a little bit more in detail on this. There were 3 examples that I gave y'all of full faith and credit. What were the 3 examples? Go ahead, Bart.
License, crime, and marriage.
License, crime, and marriage. What was license?
License, if you travel to a different state, and you have a driver's license, you can do that.
Yeah, you don't have to get a new driver's license. And the idea behind full faith and credit is, if you have a legally binding document from one state, other states have got to give it the full faith and credit. So if you have a valid driver's license, it is going to be recognized by all of the 50 states if you're just passing through. If you move permanently somewhere, that's different, but in the event that you're just passing through, it's fine. With crime, what was the example with crime?
Crime was, if you commit a crime in one state, don't cross borders because you're subject to that in all the states.
Go ahead, Brian.
No, it's if I commit a crime here and I go to like Pennsylvania, and they can't charge me for the crime there, they can just hold me until I get back here.
They can hold you, and they can actually extradite you back to the state that's in question. So if you're wanted, or if you break out of jail and they catch you in another state, they can't necessarily prosecute you for those things, but they can hold you and send you back so that you can be prosecuted in the state in question. And with marriage, and Ian, you started to get a little bit off track with the marriage part. It's not that the government can, if Ruth gets married, is she married in all of the 50 states if she gets married in Maryland? That is true.
Married with another guy, yes, with another girl.
If you get married to a man, thank you, Ruth, then in fact, yes, it's going to be recognized. And this is where, Ian, you got a little bit confusing on this. If it is with a woman or a same-sex circumstance, no. And even if it's legal in those states, it is not going to be recognized in other states. So the full faith and credit has a limitation, although word for word, you would think it would be allowed.
So basically, states have to recognize other state laws.
Other state legal documents.
Okay.
You have a legally binding document. Yes.
I didn't understand the woman part. Same-sex what?
Same-sex marriage. If you marry a female, you're married in all 50 states under full faith and credit. But if you were to marry a male in Massachusetts, that does not mean that you're married in all 50 states, because not all 50 states recognize it. What questions do you have from the terms up here? Let's go fast because we're running out of film. Go ahead.
Amendment fractions.
Amendment fractions. What was the fraction required in order for Congress to be able to propose an amendment? No. 2/3. You need a 2/3 vote of the House and the Senate in order to propose an amendment. What is the fraction that was required, when you think back to it, in order to ratify the constitutional amendment? Number of states. 3/4 or 38 of the 50 states. What was the fraction that was required to ratify the Constitution?
Same,
3/4?
5 something?
5 something?
So you that and 2/3.
What was the fraction that was required to ratify the Constitution? It was not 3/5.
Wait, back
9 and
colonial?
9/13. You had to have 9 of the 13 in order to ratify. If you wanted to pass a bill under the Articles of Confederation, what was the fraction?
unanimous.
13/13. It had to be unanimous. And in fact, what was 3/5?
The clause,
Okay,
it was like 5 slaves were considered free people.
for representation and taxation purposes. 3/5, 2/3, 3/4, 9/13, and 13/13. Make sure you got a good grasp on those fractions, and we've just covered all of those on the tape. Go ahead, Hastu.
2/3 vote for what?
2/3 was to propose a constitutional amendment. 2/3 vote by the House and the Senate proposes a constitutional amendment.
To make a change in constitution.
Just to propose to change it, yes. And then it takes 3/4 of the states to agreeing with that in order to pass it. What other questions have y'all got? Gotta go, gotta go.
It's the New Jersey one.
What was the New Jersey and the Virginia plans? We were talking about some of the early debates, and this was the earliest of the debates as far as establishing the Constitution. We were talking about size, as I recall.
Yeah, the small like versus the big states.
Yes, New Jersey was a small state. How did they want the states to be represented?
One, like, as our equals now.
Every state would have an equal voice. And ultimately, the New Jersey plan is represented how in today's United States government? In the United States Senate, because all states, regardless of population, have 2 votes each. What was the Virginia plan's idea? The big states, based on population. So how would that work?
The House.
The House of Representatives became, the Virginia plan became the House of Representatives. The more population you have, the more representation you have. California has over 50 House members. Wyoming has 1. In the United States Senate, Wyoming has 2 senators and California has 2 senators. And basically that was their compromise. What else have you got from the terms?
House of Representatives, what is that? It's not a Congress, right?
House of Representatives is one part of the Congress, yes. It is. It is the part that's based on population. And we'll talk about that more when we get into the Congress chapter. But that's what that is now. What else have you got? Go ahead, Ernest.
1808.
What was the 1808 compromise? Because this one was sort of twisted. There was the 3/5 compromise that was dealing with slavery, and 1808 also dealt with slavery. What was that? Go ahead, Bart.
To ban the slave trade 20 years after.
20 years.
Why did they set it up for 20 years? Because you're absolutely right, but why? Anybody?
Because the economy would, if they figured that if it was a gradual change, the economy wouldn't suffer as much.
If they immediately basically ended slavery, number one, you would be taking people's property, and that was a problem. But number two, you would have crippled the southern economy. So you're right. The idea of giving them 20 years would give them time to prepare and plan for life without slaves. What actually was the result, though? Did this help end slavery? Because that was their intention.
No.
What did it really do?
Distribution accelerated the slave.
It accelerated the importation of slaves. It dug its roots deeper so that when 1808 came around, they did not need the slave trade. They bred and traded within the country. So slavery never died, not until the Civil War. What other questions have y'all got from these terms? Oh, many terms.
The commerce power is basically just federal regulation of interstate.
Let's hold off on chapter 3. Let's make sure we get through all through chapter 2
Yeah,
first.
that-
Yeah, no, you're fine, and I apologize. Let's just so there's no confusion on it. Anybody, even that's not on camera, with questions?
We should know the chapter 2 questions as well, right?
Yeah, you should. Do you have any questions about chapter 2?
The punishments for the Boston Tea Party,
The punishments. What number was that?
is number 2.
Number
blocking.
2, under the Constitution.
I think it was the blocking of Boston Northern and taxing of, like,
Let's see here. Yeah, go ahead, Ian, speak up, I'm sorry.
heavier taxes on certain goods from England.